Orlah, Aleph Dalet. If a tree was uprooted, but one root remained, it's exempt. And how much must the root be? Ramagil says in the same name of Reb Eliezer ben Yehuda of Bartua as a stretching pin. If a tree was uprooted but had a sunken shoot and it lives on it, then the old one becomes like the sunken shoot. If he sank a shoot year after year and it became detached, one counts from the time it became detached. The engrafting connection of grapevines and engrafting on an engraved branch, even if one had sunk it into the ground, it is permitted. But Meir says in a place where its potency is effective, it is permitted, but in a place where its potency is deficient, it's forbidden. So too, if a bent down shoot has become detached and it is full of fruit, if it increased 100th part, it is forbidden.
Okay.
One more.
It can increase to 200th part, not a 100th part.
It increased one 200th part.
Yes.
Right. So if a shoot of Orlah or of a vineyard kalayim became mixed up with shoots, one may not gather it. But if he gathered it, it becomes void in 201. Provided he does not gather with this in mind, Rabbi Yossi says he may even gather it with this in mind, yet it becomes void in 201. Okay.
Okay. All right. Mishna Zayin, ha'alim v'ha'lulavim u'megefanim basmadar. So now we're talking about parts of the plant that are not the fruit. The alim, the leaves. That's the lulavim is the branches. Okay.
Right.
Megefanim. Megefanim is the liquid that comes out of the. It's basically the sap.
The sap. Okay.
Yeah. Basmadar. Smadar is the flower of the geffen of the grapevine. It's okay. You don't think of grapes as having like flowers, but it's that little there is a little flower that's eventually going to develop into the fruit. Mutarim ba'orla. There's no Orlah prohibition on all of these things because Orlah only affects the fruit. It doesn't affect the wood or anything else. Okay. Mutarim ba'orla or beravai. And similarly, if it is a fourth year plant, there's no kedusha to the non-fruit part of the plant. Uva nazir. Furthermore, if you have a nazir is not permitted any produce of the grapevine. However, if for example he wants to take the leaves, if he's got some sort of tea that he makes out of grape leaves, that's allowed. That's allowed for a nazir.
Yeah.
Okay. Vasurim ba'ashera. However, if the grapevine was turned into an Asherah tree for Avodah Zarah, then the entire thing becomes a chavetz of Isser, and there's no right, and then there is no there's no heter for any part of it.
Okay.
Rabbi Yossi Omer hasmadar asur mipnei shul pri. Rabbi Yossi says no, the smadar, those buds of the flowers of the grapevine, that's also going to be asur in terms in Orlah because it's ultimately going to be fruit and therefore it's considered fruit now. Halacha does not follow Rabbi Yossi here. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer Omer hamamid b'srafa Orlah asur. Now, mamid is talking about cheese making. We spoke about cheese making in our Tashrus year. What you need is some sort of catalyst to make the milk a curdle, and apparently resin can work from that. And if you've got, and so Rabbi Eliezer says if you take resin from an Orlah vine, and you put or an Orlah tree, and you put that into your milk in order to curdle it, he says your cheese becomes aser. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua says to Rabbi Eliezer, "Shema'at befer she'amamid b'strafa alim b'strafa ikarim mutar, b'strafa pagim asur mipnei shehem pri." He says it makes a difference where this resin is coming from, because if it comes from the non-fruit parts of the tree, then there's no problem using that. Just like we said in the beginning of the Mishnah, the rest of the tree is completely mutar during the Orlah years. But if he's taking from resin that comes from the unripe fruits, those are fruits, and therefore if you curdle your milk with that, then the cheese will be aser. And the halacha follows Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua at least. The halacha follows Rabbi Yeshua that there is that subtle difference between what kind of resin you use to curdle your milk. Mishna Ches, Ankoklos v'chartzanim. So Ankoklos, the Yerushalmi explains this term as as grapes that basically were defective and went bad before they became even a third ripe. They just never ripened properly, and it's
I'm on the
okay.
computer.
Okay, yeah. And Koklos, oh, you got the computer working, I see. And your name is now 613. No, my sound didn't change.
Oh, I'm okay. I'm okay now.
You're
Okay.
good. But I'm getting echo.
Getting echo. All right.
You remember whatever that trick was that you used to do
Yeah,
to
I
get
got
rid
it.
of the echo? You can do that. Okay. Okay, so the ankoklos, that's the defective grapes. Achart sanim, that's the seeds of the grapes. Zagim, that's the skins of the grapes. Temed shelahem. Temed is if you took the skins and you left them soaking in water, it makes a slightly flavored water kind of beverage. We had temed, I think, in Maaser Sheni. Was it in Maaser Sheni where we said that if it started to if the temed has started to ferment, then you can use Maaser Sheni money on it before but before that, it's considered it's considered basically just water, and you're not allowed to use Maaser Sheni for water. Okay, but let's say you made a temed for from these from Orlah.
Yeah, from the grape kernels and the grape husks, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, the kernels, the husks, and the temed is the stuff that's fermented from it. Klipe, furthermore, also klipe rimon, the peels of the rimon, which are not themselves edible really. Vaneit shelo, and that's the crown of the rimon.
Right.
The klipe egozim, nutshells. Agarinim and the seeds, and agarinim are that's seeds of any kind of fruit. Asurim be'orla. They're all prohibited for in Orlah, and certainly ba'ashera, uba nazir, and a nazir is not allowed to have any of those things from a grape, from a grapevine. Umutarin beravai. But in the fourth year, when things are treated as Maaser Sheni, when it's basically the same as Maaser Sheni, so we say that's mutar. Those things are not considered as having the kedusha of Maaser Sheni because they're not really food. So we have to. So when we look at the distinctions about novlos kula masuros, and the novlos are the fruit that fell off before they were ripe. Right. They're all asur in terms of Orlah, in terms of Ravai and Asherah, whether it's or for Nazir. Okay, so if you take a look at the categories of these different isurim, Asherah is avodah zarah, always affects the entire plant. The wood, the leaves, every single part of the plant becomes asur in an Asherah. When it comes to Orlah, the isur only attaches to the fruit. And all the parts of the fruit. So even the non-edible parts of the fruit are nonetheless considered Orlah because they're part of the fruit. And when it comes to Ravai, that only attaches to the edible parts. So it kind of gets narrowed down as you go through these stages, these different categories.
We're not talking about the wood of the tree or the vine.
So the wood of the tree, it becomes asur with an Asherah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Orlah, Asherah applies to the entire plant.
Right.
Okay. The Orlah applies only to the fruit, both the edible and the non-edible parts of the fruit, and Ravai only applies to the edible parts.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Rabbi Yossi Omer, not in Yichur Shel Orlah. Let's say you have a branch that broke off an Orlah tree, and you want to now replant it. You know, some trees you can stick them in water, and new roots will grow, and then you can plant it. Okay, so what's wrong with doing that with an Orlah branch? And that's fine. Says Rabbi Yossi. You can take it because the branch is not, as we said, Orlah only attaches to the fruit, not to the wood. So there's no problem with planting a stick of Orlah and letting it grow into a new tree. Ve'ein not in egos shel Orlah. However, if you have a nut of Orlah, you can't plant it. The nut is the seed, obviously.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that seed, if that nut is Orlah, then you cannot have benefit from it. You can't grow a new tree from it. Mipnei shu pri. Right, the egos is the fruit, and therefore you can't plant it. It's completely prohibited to have any benefit from it. Ve'ein markivin bekafnios shel Orlah, and furthermore, you can't graft with the branches of Orlah. Now, what's the deal over here? In markivin, so if you've got a branch that's got little berries on it, so that broke off a tree that's got Orlah, and it's actually got fruit on that branch. You're not allowed to now take that and graft it onto another tree. Even grafting is allowed between trees of the same species. So let's say you've got one whatever berry tree or something, or it's talking about berries. But let's say we've got an orange tree. And it's a little orange tree. It's an Orlah tree, and there's a branch on it that's got a little bud of an orange that's growing. And you think, let me cut that off and graft it onto or it breaks off. And you say, okay, let me graft that onto my 30-year-old orange tree over there, and that'll be now it's taking from the mother tree, and it won't be considered Orlah anymore. And he says, nah, those berries formed from an Orlah tree, those berries are asur. Right, that fruit is going to be asur. So you're not allowed to graft it onto an old tree, because you're going to come to forget that this is Orlah, and then you're going to be over on a doraisa.
How do you graft that? Do you just attach to the other branch?
So I've never done it myself, but from what I've seen described is you basically you cut off the bark of the target plant, right, and we're in the same shape as whatever the surface area is of the branch that you want to graft. And you put them on, you might put some sort of nourishing thing in between them, and you tie them together. You tie them tight together, and after a while, they will grow together, and the branch draws its sustenance from the mother tree.
Grafting a bone, I think.
Yeah. It's the same verb. Obviously, bones and trees are different. Right. But I remember seeing this. I was like amazed by this as a kid. I saw in some science book when I was a kid that if you take a branch of a pear tree and you graft it onto an apple tree, this is a non-Jewish book, so that, they don't have to worry about kilayim.
Right.
Okay. So if you take this branch of a pear tree and graft it onto an apple tree, then it will live, and that branch will grow pears from an apple tree.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, let's do chazars.
Okay. Let me see. Okay. We are
Gimel Daled.
Right over here in Chala.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, if one dedicates his produce before the time for tithing had come and he redeemed it, he's liable. If after the time for tithing had come and he redeemed it, it is liable. If he dedicated it before it was completed and the treasurer completed it and he redeemed it afterwards, it is exempt, because at the time when it was rendered liable, it was exempt. Non-Jew provided a Jew to make for him dough, it is exempt from challah. If he presented it to him as a gift before rolling it out, he is liable. After rolling it out, he's exempt. If one makes dough with a non-Jew, if the portion of the Jew does not equal that measured liable to challah, it is exempt from challah. And if one became a proselyte and he had dough and it was made before he converted, he is exempt. If after he converted, he is liable. If in doubt, he is liable. And one is not liable to the added fifth. And Rebbe Akiva says all proceeds according to when the crust was formed in the oven.
So he's disagreeing about everything that was spoken before. Everyone else has been talking about Gilgala when you've rolled the dough, and Rabbi Akiva says no, challah is only applicable once the crust is formed, but that's not the halacha. Okay. Masras Daled base.
Okay, let me just move this
along. Oh, sorry, did I get this wrong? Oh, yeah, that's right. It is Daled base.
Okay. If children hid figs for the Sabbath and forgot to tie them, they may not be eaten after the Shabbos before tithing them. A basket for the Sabbath, Beis Shammai exempts, but Beis Hillel declares it liable. Rabbi Yehuda says, he who gathers a basketful to send to his friend may likewise not eat before tithing. If one takes olives from the vat, he may dip them into salt one by one and eat them. If he salted them and put them before himself, he is liable. Rabbi Eliezer says, from a clean vat he is liable, but from an unclean one he's exempt because he can return the remainder. One may drink over the press with either warm or cold and be exempt. So says Reb Meir, and Reb Eliezer B'Tzadik declares liable. The Chachamim say with warm he is liable and with cold he is exempt. Okay.
Kilayim Gimel Hey.
Hey. One may plant a cucumber and a gourd in one hollow, provided this leans to one side and the other leans to the other side. The tips of the leaves of one lean to one side and the tips of the leaves of the other to the other side, because whatever the Chachamim forbade, they were decreed only on account of appearances.
That, by the way, is a very important principle to bear in mind with kilayim, is that the only issur is actually planting them together. If they grow together in close proximity, that's all gezer d'Rabbanan.
So if I plant two different things next to each other, but they're growing opposite directions, and there's enough space between them.
Yes, that's exactly what the Mishna just said. Yeah,
that's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
If his field was sown with onions and he wishes to plant it in rows of gourds, Rav Ishmael says he uproots 2 rows and plants 1 row, and leaves a standing crop of onions over the space of 2 rows and uproots 2 rows and plants 1 row. Rabbi Akiva says he uproots 2 rows and plants 2 rows and leaves the standing crop of onions over the space of 2 rows, and uproots 2 rows and plants 2 rows. But the Chachamim say if they are not 12 cubits between one row and the other, he may not retain the seeds between them. That's a strange luck of the first one that I read, because I would think that you wouldn't want them, in the same row, because it would look from someone walking by saying, "Hey, he's growing this and he's growing that." That's Kalayim,
Well, if it's in neat rows and you can see that they're all in distinct places, then that's not kilayim.
Right.
That's the whole point. Is you don't want it to look like a bilbul. It's got to look like it's mesudar, and there's a place for the wheat and there's a place for the barley, and they're different in different places.
Aren't they afraid though that some of those seeds will blow into the other one and create another plant next to it?
Right. So if that happens, then you're going to go and obligate the guy to uproot them.
Right. So I have that pomegranate tree which I can't use, and all of a sudden we see that there's another pomegranate on the other side of the lawn, on the other side of the grass over there. That's supposed to blow.
It seeded itself.
It seeded itself. Yeah.
That's nice.
It's still.
Why do you say you can't use it?
It's unedible. Inedible. And I'm trying to find out about if I can take it out. So I think if it's inedible,
is it the one that makes the small pomegranates?
The miniature ones.
Yeah, I've got one of those as well.
And they look terrible when they they're not nice, and they're not. I don't think yours aren't edible either, right?
No, they're not. They're not meant to be edible. So it's a good question. If it's I don't think if it's inedible that it's considered a fruit tree in terms of the halachas of uprooting it.
Right. When I moved in, I'd like for a pomegranate tree, and they said okay, but I didn't mean that kind of tree. I meant a nice pomegranate
one
tree.
that you can actually eat. Yes.
Right. Okay. Let me see. We're on Gimel Zion. Gourd in vegetable is as vegetable, but in grain it is given a bet rova. If one's field was sown with grain and he wished to plant it in a row of gourds, it is given 6 tefachim for tending it. And if it grew, it must be uprooted in front of it. Reb Yossi says that if it is given 4 tefachim to tend it, they said
or
to him,
Amos,
I'm sorry, to tend it. They said to him, "Do you treat this more stringently than vine?" And he said to them, "We find this to be more stringent than vine, since a single vine is given 6 tefachim to tend it, but a single gourd is given a bet rova." Reb Meir says in the name of Ishmael, whenever there are 3 gourds in a bet saw, he may not bring it into the bet saw any seed. Reb Yossi ben Chatov Friday said in the name of Reb Yismael, whenever there are 3 gourds in a bet core, he may not bring it into the bet core any seed. Okay.
Right, that's a pretty extreme position over there. It's like basically this huge field, and you've only got 3 gourds in it. Okay, the halacha is like the Tanakama here. Okay,
Nagayim.
Nagayim.
The cedar wood should be 1 cubit long and as thick as a quarter of the leg of a bed. Measure the thickness by splitting a bed leg into 2 pieces and then splitting the 2 pieces into 4. The Ezov must not be a Greek Ezov, nor Korkala Ezov, nor roaming Ezov, nor desert Ezov, nor any other Ezov with a qualifying description.
You remember where else we came across the Azov?
No, I
There's
don't.
also in a ritual of purification.
Oh,
You getting there?
I'm getting there. It has to do with you mean the paraduma?
Yes,
No.
the paraduma. Exactly. Well done.
Okay. It's Azov, not Ezov. It's Azov. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's continue looking at the Hebrew. On the 8th day, the Mitzvah brings 3 animals, a sin offering, a guilt offering, and a burnt offering. A poor person brings birds for the sin offering and the burnt offering. The Mitzvah comes to the guilt offering, leans both hands on it, and slaughters it. 2 Kohanim receive its blood, one in a vessel and the other in his hand. The Kohen receives the blood in a vessel, comes and throws it against the side of the altar. The Kohen who receives the blood in his hand then comes to the Mitzvah. The Mitzvah has already immersed himself in the chamber of the Mitzarim, and he has come to stand in Nicanor's gate. Rabbi Yehuda says he does not require immersion. Okay. We up to Harios. Okay. For all of the commandments of the Torah, for which one is liable for willful transgression to charas, for inadvertent transgression to a sin offering, an individual offers a she lamb or a she goat. The king offers a he goat, and the anointed Kohen and the court offers a bull. For idolatry, the individual, the king, and the anointed Kohen offer a she goat. And the court offers a bull and a goat and a bull and a burnt offering and a goat as a sin offering. With regard to an Asham Talu, the individual and the king are liable, but the anointed Kohen and the court are exempt. With regard to the definite guilt offering, the individual, the king, and the anointed Kohen are liable, but the court is exempt. For the sin offering, the sin of hearing the voice of adoration, the utterance of an oath, or the lips, or the tumor contamination of the temple, or its consecrated articles, the court is exempt, but the individual, the king, and the anointed Kohen are liable. But the Kohen Gadol is not liable for the tumor contamination of the temple or its consecrated articles. These are the words of Reb Shimon. What do they offer? The variable sin offering. Reb Eliezer says the king offers a he goat.
You know, this is Rabbi Eliezer being consistent to his. Wait, is he? Sorry, I'm just thinking he's thinking like that the asham has basically got the same dinim as a chatas. Is this how's it on a kares? Yeah. The halacha is not like him, but you can just bet that anywhere that we're talking about an asham, that Rabbi Eliezer is going to stick his hand up and say, I hold that an asham is basically the same as a chatasi, other than the fact that it's a male.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Anointed Kohen who sinned and then passed from his position of anointment, and similarly a king who sinned and then passed from his position of greatness. The anointed Kohen brings a bull, and the king brings a he goat.
Right. So even if the king abdicated or the Kohen abdicated, once they've been chayav in a certain korban, then they don't lose that level of chiyuv. They still have to bring the same korban as they had before.
And anointed
Okay,
Kohen.
that's it. We're done.
Okay.
No. And Kesubos.
Okay. If one gave his daughter in Erison, and the groom divorced her, and again he gave her in Erison, and she was widowed, her ketubah belongs to him. If he gave her in marriage and her husband divorced her, and again he gave her in marriage and she was widowed, the ketubah belongs to her, Rabbi Yehuda says. When he keeps saying and gave her in marriage again, does that mean he's marrying the same person or it's a different person?
Hold on. Rabbi Yehuda says that the first one belongs to her father. Just a second. So let's just get this case right.
All right.
So the girl, this is the girl who's married off by her father,
Right.
and so he takes she takes Erison, and the first husband divorces her. Okay, now that seems to be that it's she's returned to her own rishus, because once she's called the Osama b'chayei aviha. Once she's been divorced, then she's no longer in her father's rishus. Okay, Erisa, and now the father's. Wait, this is but she still gets a kasuba. Is that right? Does she get the kasuba from the erisin? I think it's only from the chuppah. Then she takes erisin again from the second husband, and this armala, and then the second guy dies. Okay, kasuba sashelo. So now the kasuba from the second guy belongs to her. Why does it belong to her? Even the kasuba of her first husband belongs to her, because it was written at a time when she was אפילו כסובה שנכתב בזמן שעשה עדיין ברשות אביה, שלה היא שמי שהסיעה פקעה רשות האב מעליה. So once she has married, then then the father has no more rishus over her. Sorry, this is the first, I'm reading the wrong case. So because she was only through erisin, the kasuba that she gets belongs to the father because she didn't leave his rishus, because it was only erisin. However, hisia, if she actually went to chuppah and then this first husband divorced her, hisia, and then he married her again, and now she was widowed. Now her kasuba is hers, because after she's been to the chuppah, her father has no more rishus over her. That's called the Osama b'chayei abiha. She's considered an orphan in her father's lifetime, because he has no domain over her once she's been married. Okay, and Rabbi Yehuda says the Rishona does the first husband the first husband's kasuba still belongs to the father. Why? Because it was because it was written before the nisuin, while she was still in the rishus of the father, as says Rabbi Yehuda. So Chachamim disagree with him and say no. Amru lo mishi hisia ein lavia rishus ba. As soon as she has gone to the chuppah, the father loses all rishus, including the kasuba that was written before. Okay, Karen with Gemel.
A female prostitute whose daughter converted with her and subsequently committed adultery, the latter is liable to strangling. Neither the requirement to take her to the door of the father's house applies to her, nor to the 100 seller. Even if her conception had not been in holiness, but her birth had been in holiness, she is liable to stoning. Neither the requirement to take her to the door of the father's house applies to her, nor to the 100 seller.
Okay, so just background over here. This is talking about the case of the Nara Morasa, that if she is if a girl is married by erisin, but she's still living in her father's house, and then witnesses come to say that she has committed adultery. So normally, if a woman is living with her husband and she commits adultery, then she and the adulterer both get chenek.
Right.
But if she's still in her father's house, then the din is skila. So now we've already jumped into the edge case where we're talking about the daughter of a convert, and does she still have the din of skila for committing adultery? Okay, and that's what our Mishna is talking about. But if she's even if she was conceived before her mother converted, but then her mother converted and she was born in Kedusha, Harei Zo b'skila. Now she's treated like a Yisraelis as far as this din of skila is concerned.
Even if her conception had not been in holiness, but her birth had been in holiness, she is liable to stoning. Neither the requirement to take her to the door of her father's house applies to her, nor to the 100 seller. If both her conception and her birth were in holiness, she is like a daughter of Israel in all respects. If she has a father, but she has no door of the...
In other words, if she's homeless.
No door to her father's house, or if she had a door of the father's house, but she had no father, she is nevertheless liable to stoning. The door of a father's house was intended only as a precept.
Right, so it's not ma'akev the rest of the din. The fact is that if the woman is chayav skila, even if she doesn't have a father's house, or even if she doesn't have a father, the din of skila still takes effect.
The father has the authority over his daughter regarding her erisin, whether affected by money, by document, or relations. He has the right to her findings, her handiwork, and the absolution of her vows, and he receives her bill of divorce, but he does not enjoy the ufrik during her lifetime. If she married, the husband exceeds him in that he enjoys the ufrik during her lifetime, and he is liable for her support, her ransom, and her burial. Rabbi Yehuda says even the poorest in Israel may not hire fewer than 2 flutes and a laminating woman.
Right. So we've got there's a correlation between the husband's rights from his over his wife and his obligations to his wife. So we see he's got matzias, and the matzia is in exchange for mazonos. The fact that he has to feed her means that he's entitled to anything that she finds. Masa yadeha, we said is 4. Nadarim and Ukura. I can't remember the correlation between them. There we go. Tiknu mazonas tachas maase yadeha, upirkona tachas peros. Peros. So the fact that he gets the peros from the marriage, the usufruct. So all of it. So if she owns land, then he's allowed to farm it, right? But that's because he has the obligation to ransom her if she ever gets kidnapped. Okay. So the k sounds come together as well. So because he inherits her kasuba, he also is obligated in her burial.
Right. Okay. All right. Right.
Okay. Where's Zehu?
Good. By the way, a little trick I found out. I don't know if it works without restarting my